Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. It's Saturday morning, a little after 10 a.m. It is the 18th of February. The month is flying by, and welcome. Hope everybody's had a good week. Hope you've had a good week. On last time we were together, last Monday, we spoke from Matthew, and I can't remember. It's bad, isn't it? Because I'm the one that did the talking. But we were looking at Matthew and a little bit here. I'll see where we were. Any questions while I look this up? Because I think it was Matthew 4. But any questions on anything before we get started? As we get started, as rather. Yeah, we talked about starting at verse 18, Jesus choosing his disciples, and I was saying that asking the questions: are we disciples these days? What are disciples? What makes a disciple? And we throw terms around all the time, and this came up when I was speaking with someone at work who kept talking about Christianity, and following, and we got to talking about what is Christianity and what degree do we follow anymore? What is it that we're following? So just gave us an opportunity to take a look at who we are. That's where we were on Monday night. But again, any questions on anything?
Ron, this is Valerie. At some point, I would like if someone could explain in Ezekiel, the 37th chapter, about the dry bones. What does the spiritual meaning behind the dry bones?
Okay, Ezekiel what? You remember
Ezekiel, Ezekiel, the 37th chapter.
Okay. Pastor, are you on yet?
I'm on.
Ezekiel 32nd, looking at the dry bones.
Yeah.
Give us a second, Val. We're trying to find it. I'm familiar with it. I have not read that in years.
It talks about the bones bleaching in the valley, and the breath of the Lord swept over them, the wind swept over them, and they began to move towards each other. And it's talking more about our humanity than it is about anything else. Are you there?
Yes, sir. I am. Do you care to elaborate further in the particular verses that you're looking at?
No, there's no particular verse. I just wanted to basically just explain what it all meant. That's all.
What verse did you start in, Valerie?
I really started with the first verse 1, really.
I'm taking a look at it. I think I can add something.
Okay.
The depending on what translation you're looking at, but as Pastor just said, deals with the whole of humanity and the spiritual resurrection of humanity. So it's talking about the depths to which, or the low spiritual place to which it is possible to sink in a sense. But regardless of how far away from a source of life or spirit you may move, there is always the chance to be resurrected. So when it says, I will put sinews on you, I will make flesh grow back on you, cover you with skin and put breath in you that you may come alive, which is chapter 37, verse 6. It's the process of spiritual resurrection, even from a state of like being completely dry without water. And in this case, water being the metaphor for spirit. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. And in that verse, well, in that chapter, verse 3, it also mentions the Son of Man, which I mentioned in previous weeks was really the human being, the spiritual core of the human being. So it is talking about all of us and the process by which the nation of Israel can be resurrected. And of course, the nation of Israel is the essentially the connectedness between all spiritually seeking conscious beings. Internally, it is the sort of mentality and you can think of it as the thoughts and behaviors of one who is seeking spiritually. Anyway, I'm done. Thanks.
And Nick, the idea is when we see the Son of Man mentioned, whether it's the Old Testament or the New Testament, it really should have been translated to human. So this is definitely talking about humanity as a whole, as opposed to the way we have translated the Son of Man as being Jesus and Jesus only. Thanks.
Yes, sir. And similarly to that, everywhere you see where Jesus is making reference to himself in the New Testament, the one you see, I am he, that kind of thing, that is also, I believe, somewhat of a mistranslation. That's referencing the nature of the consciousness of Yeshua, or the nature of the consciousness of the Son of Man, which is the spiritual core of all of us.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Val, did that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Good start for the day. Anyone else? Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We talk a lot about age, like the ending of an age. And my question to the family is, what is considered as an age? I know it's spiritual, but it's also physical. And as I read about the age, like the age of Aquarius, I know that the Pisces age has ended, because that was the age where Christ was, Jesus was. So my question this morning is, what's considered as an age? And one more thing before you answer that, I remember the Fifth Dimension used to sing this song, this is the dawning of an age of Aquarius. My siblings, we used to listen to that a long time ago when we were young. So my question is again, what is considered as an age, and what does it mean spiritually?
Evelyn, I'm glad you asked that, and I'm going to turn this over to our experts on this to answer it. But it's something I've been kind of pondering myself and looking at, and I even sent an article to Janice to look at, because in the article, it talked about one of the things that said in the age of Aquarius is it talked about the years rescinding, meaning or going backwards, or sort of like time stopping in the age of Aquarius, and it talked about all the zodiacs going through this. So as this time kind of regresses, and that caught my attention, and I did not bring it up because I wanted to find an article that supported that, and I haven't had a chance to yet. You just reminded me of it, but that was interesting to me. As we look at time as we know it, and what did that part mean? Does that mean that the time goes back to the beginning, or the man has a chance to repair what has been done in the earth or to the universe? I did not know. The other thing that I was just kind of add to what you're asking is dealing with the water. How do you transform it or leave one age into the next? Because both of those deal with the water. And I think it's just something there that at least I haven't seen yet, from Pisces to Aquarius. So yeah, I like your question, and I know I don't know if Janice is on, and Nick and Pastor, whoever else has done some research in this. Please help us out. Thank you.
Good morning, Ron. I am on. I have not had a chance to finish that article. I've gotten about 3/4 of the way through it. So it's still on my list.
Okay.
I don't think that we could talk about the age of Aquarius or the Zodiac itself without understanding the origin. And the origin is the labeling for the different tribes of Israel, and understanding what the tribes of Israel are, as well as understanding what the names mean for those who were the leaders of those different tribes of Israel. Why? Because the different tribes of Israel speak to different aspects of the life of one who seeks to rule as does Elohim. It is more than a period that influences your birth. Is more than a different group of people who populated the earth because they didn't. This is about different mindsets, and we can get into the New Age aspects of it, but I hope we don't, because I don't want us to go there. I want us to stay in and look at the spiritual aspects of it, and when we do that, we'll begin to see that all 12 of those what we call zodiac forms, or those flags of the tribes of Israel, all of them are one entity, yet it's different aspects of the same entity. And what you were saying, Ron, when you talk about the reverse of the earth, it was talking about a retrograde, and I think that Janice or someone else would be better able to explain that than I. But again, I would rather we look at it purely from the spiritual perspective than from the perspective of, and I use this loosely, the New Age. Thank you.
I can add to that. I think as we mentioned, the whole Bible is a sort of very detailed explanation of our own spiritual evolution. And sort of in general, as Pastor Richard says, the ages are correlated to the 12 tribes of Israel, who are themselves, you could think of them as aspects of the self or seasons of mentalities that we move through as we grow and know more about ourselves and spirit. So if you think of like as we grow from children into adults, there are different periods or ways of thinking that we move through. There are different aspects of ourselves and things we learn about what it means to be a complete human being that we go through. And all of those make up the total being that we are. And in terms of the earth, that same thing happens. When we move through different ages, it's as if the general mentality that is dominant in the earth shifts over time. And there are different social and political things that occur on a more sort of mundane level, but it's because of the nature of the energy present within the earth as a result of the season or the particular mentality we're moving through. So there are, of course, 12 tribes of Israel. There are 12 disciples with their female counterparts, which of course is not something explicitly mentioned, but the pattern repeats itself. And as I've heard it said, what we see in the New Testament is what is in the Old Testament, just reinterpreted, although that's not quite the word I want to use. But it's the same pattern. Anyway, thank you.
And I look at it from go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, you go ahead, Barbara.
No, follow up with Nick because I might take you somewhere else, Shanice.
Oh, okay. Nick, would it be fair to think of these sort of astrological changes as a type of weather in terms of a metaphor? I think of, how the planets represent different energies that have an influence. And I'm just kind of wondering if that isn't a type of almost spiritual weather, if you will.
Actually, I think that's a very good way to describe it. And like depending on the weather, your mood changes, right?
Yep.
Now, when you are balanced and you have some degree of knowledge of self, you can sort of maintain regardless of the weather. And that is the responsibility of everyone sort of spiritually seeking, is to recognize the influences that we might consider external, but the influences that are also internal, that are in our environment, etc., and then learning how to maintain balance and awareness throughout whatever situation. It's the same thing with the earth and with the what those sort of 12 tribes of Israel represent. As the age shifts, there is always what needs to be recognized in the present moment, and it always directs you back to understanding the totality of the self, or the conscious self and spirit as its origin.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good way of...
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, thinking about it like the weather is, I think, a good way of understanding it. Or internally, your weather may be various things that arise within your subconscious that you don't necessarily understand how to deal with. and yet we must learn how to deal with whatever it is we feel is a part of ourselves and bring balance to it. It's a bit like that, or like when you go through puberty. It's a particularly stormy period, and yet the same spiritual capacity is there. So the great cycle, so going through all 12 signs of the zodiac, or moving and passing through all 12 sort of aspects of self, represented by the tribes of Israel, represented by the 12 disciples, male and female, is the sort of grand process of learning about the true nature of the spirit that is our self, and all of the different things it has to engage and yet maintain its sense of balance. And actually, in order to bring balance to all those things we experience and all those aspects of self that make up the total being that we are. Thank you.
Would that be the same as seasonal? Everything happening like the same age is same as seasonal?
I think that's a good way to think about it, yeah. And in this description, there's 12 seasons rather than 4.
Thank you. Ms. Barbara, did you have something you wanted to add?
Janice really gave an excellent example as it relates to the weather. I was simply going to add another aspect of it from a broader perspective. I was thinking about the cosmos and the universe and how there are vibrations, and all of those vibrations resonate spiritually in some way. And an age or an epic has it's like a stringed instrument, and that a certain note has a particular resonance, and each one of those ages have resonances that vibrate in a way. For instance, Aquarius is the age of connectedness and getting back to your feeling your spiritual consciousness. And I think Nick said it as he talked about how these relate to the individual and the individual's knowledge of self and finding self. So I saw it as just the like you go up the scale of an instrument. Each note is different, has a different resonance. Well, each one of those 12 zodiac signs, or the 12 tribes of Israel, have certain energies attached to them. And then an age is simply what's the prevailing energy, predominant energy in a certain period of time. And that has everything to do with what we think, how we feel, et cetera, et cetera. So I was thinking of it at a different kind of macro level. Thank you.
Just to add to that, in terms of the cosmos and the universe, on a physical level, the sun the earth goes around the sun. So depending on what position it's in around the sun, determines what age we're in. And I think an age is about 2,000, maybe 2,500 years, something like that. So the age is determined by where the Earth is in its position relative to its orbit around the sun. Anyway, that's the physical.
I have a question. I want to know if Pastor want to go first, though, because he had a thought on what was being said.
No, go ahead, Ron, with your question.
My question is the word age sort of talks about time. It denotes time. Is that, do you think that can be influenced, that time? Audrey mentioned 2,500 years. For example, if the Son of Man, the human who becomes the transition in the earth, bringing in spirituality as being something that is awakening in mankind, does that influence those ages? Will they come faster now, or is that just a set thing that you see that happens when it happens? Or all that, because we've talked about a lot of stuff has happened from eclipses to the lining up of the planets to the series 1 and 2 and the comet and all these things that we talk about physically in the universe. Do you see that as being something that is being influenced by us, or that is influencing us, or what do you think on those on that term?
That's exactly where I was going, Ron. That 1,000 years is but a day, the sight of Elohim. Mentioned the 20. I think she said 25,000, 2,100 years, whatever it is. I don't see those years as being the way we count years. Because honestly, when you look at the different calendars that's out there, years are counted in different ways. I see that as a guide, and the reason I say that is because it, just like everything else, those numbers has a spiritual meaning as well. And I do believe that the ages that we are talking about, or the periods of time, or the aspects of energy that we are referencing, is indeed influenced by the desires of man. And if we are to dominate the earth, then that does mean indeed we have influence over the energies that are in the earth, the energies that allows the earth to be what it is. And saying that, we cannot possibly believe that or embrace it, that we are talking about calendar years as much as we are talking about, neither can we talk about periods of time like ages being in calendar years. I think the ages as well as the years are governed by the spiritual, for lack of a better term, understanding that man has or desires to have. For example, I believe that if our thoughts, because our thoughts are leading us in a direction of truly embracing the spiritual essence, not only of who we are, but of the universe itself, then that in itself would usher in, quote unquote, for example, the age of Aquarius, based upon how we think and based upon our desires. So the whole thing is spiritual, is my point, and this our whole conversation about energy is simply a conversation about the influences of the spirit, or the influences of the breath of our Creator on not us but also our consciousness. Knowing that the spirit cannot influence us any more than we allow it to, just like everything else. And it is my belief that the only way that the Spirit can influence you beyond you allowing it is because you have given it free reign in your life by virtue of giving up your free will. Thank you.
The one thing that we can't forget, too, is that it was man that named these ages. And I'm assuming they named them based on what changes or whatever they saw happening. So in that sense, it's relative to what the change is. So that doesn't mean that it necessarily has to be 2,000 years or whatever. It just depends on what's happening and what spiritual changes are happening. Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, and I agree with you. You're absolutely correct. I see that clearly. And also, we have to also keep in mind that the thought pattern or the thoughts that govern what we are talking about in this age was totally different than the journey of our thoughts now. Because the thoughts of the Eastern mind is totally different than the thoughts of the Western mind. And quite frankly, I think that the contamination of the Zodiac or of the meaning of the tribes of Israel comes from the application of Western thought as opposed to making every effort to see it through the eyes of the mind of the Eastern thinker. For example, we see things that we talk about. We don't hear us talking about hearing the whisper of the wind, or we don't hear us talking about trying to understand the voice of the snow as it falls, or taking the fury out of the storm and communicating with the rain. That kind of thought is not Western thought at all. But those kinds of words, those kinds of thoughts, rather, are the thoughts that has governed an understanding of what we are talking about in terms of the what we call now the Zodiac. Thank you. I think, well, that's it. Thank you.
Do you think, though, that however many years ago, whether we were, looking at indigenous people or how the universe was studied and some of the answers that they come up with, I see that as people not having an agenda, not having wanting something to gain from it, just coming up with what they saw based on them being one with the universe. Is that fair to say? And maybe that has sat, the truth behind that has sat idled for many, many, many years until now, until someone else can bring some understanding to it and then use that influence the way it's supposed to be used, rather than in the interim, people have used the Zodiac, anything else to make money from. But as Audrey said, those years are not years, or they are, or maybe I was past, I don't know, but they're just a guideline for us. So do you see that to be the case, that when these things were first done, they were done innocently, just on observation, and if someone knew the power of it, how they could be influenced, they would have found a way to do something evil or make money from it. But there, as Pastor talked about, the speaking with the rain, or walking in the forest and finding peace. And if you knew how to do that, they would try to bottle it up and make some formula from it. So I yes, sir.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, I think now it's no coincidence that now a lot of things are opening up so that we can see it, that we are no, because the universe has waited for someone to desire the responsibility of dealing with it or working with it. That's all. I'm done.
Yeah. What I was going to say, Ron, is that I think that when we talk about the East and Western thought and how we process, if we think about the way things are written based upon the Eastern mind, the mind that we hear from is an esoteric mind. I mean, if I were to stand in the midst of people who function from a Western thought and made a statement like that your mind actually removes the darkness from the night and gives us light, they would call it philosophical as opposed to esoteric. And those are the kinds of phrases that we constantly come in contact with when we think about the Eastern mind, or Native Americans for that matter. And that's simply talking about your mind has the ability to remove the confusion from the darkness itself and bring about light, the light of understanding. Those kinds of phrases, those kinds of connections to the earth itself or to the universe itself are missing from the way we have been taught to think. They are missing from the way we've been taught to process, and we have been taught to label it as being philosophical, which takes it clearly outside of the realm of spirituality, when in reality that's exactly where it belongs. And I think the intersection with the Western and Eastern mind, the Western mind became dominant, which is exoteric, which means that it's bound by the elements of the earth, is bound by the things that we see with our eyes, and it has not been freed until now. I believe that the freedom of it is what gives us the opportunity to see beyond the calendar years and to experience an age of Aquarius without having to live 2,100 years or whatever it is. It is all because if we are living in the now and everything is in the now, then we don't have to wait till tomorrow to live in the now, if that makes any sense. Thank you.
It does to me. But I have a question. Well, no, I have a comment. And tell you the reason why I asked that question about the age, because I see, and you tell me if I'm wrong, they say this age is about judgment. And I think we've talked about that a lot, how things are being exposed, things are going to be set where our mindset will be totally different. We're moving to I guess, another dimension or whatever. Our thought patterns are changing. Yeah. So is that true that this age is about judgment?
Well, it depends on how you see judgment, because spiritual judgment is not about you making decisions about somebody else's life. Spiritual judgment is about you making decisions about you. It's about you judging yourself, about you making decisions about the journey that you're going to take. When we think about judges now, we think about someone sitting on the bench giving sentence or someone sitting on the bench being a mediator between two competing sides and delivering a verdict at the end of it. That's not spiritual. The way what spiritual judgment is. It's always about you looking at yourself and moving beyond that. And don't get me wrong, I do understand that when we look at ourselves, there are times when we need input, we need communication with each other in order sometimes for us to see more clearly what we are seeing within ourselves. Does that make sense, Evelyn?
It does, and I didn't look at it on a physical scale. I was looking at it as our mental state. I'll just leave it right there.
Well, I knew you weren't. I knew you weren't looking at it physically, but I just found that I thought that it may be necessary because as a people living in this society, when we think about judgment, we have been taught, whether it be church or whether it be secular, we've been taught that judgment is about somebody sitting on a bench delivering verdicts about how you lived your life, that kind of thing. That's why I went there with that. Thank you.
Okay. So, Pastor Jay and family, does this mean that our way of thinking that you're being shifted to another or being led to another dimension? So what's really happening today as far as this Aquarian age?
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can help with that, but we're in the process of transitioning to the age of Aquarius, still in the beginning part of this process, but it is an increase in general in people of empathy, of desire to connect on a sort of organic human level. It is in the background of the sort of people in general, an increase in desire to connect spiritually and an increase in capacity to hear spiritual influence or feel spiritual influence. And then all of the ways in which we will change our behavior as a result of these increasing influences. So it's an age of a return to the awareness of the connectedness of things and much more as well, but it's a more spiritual age relative to where we've been for a while.
Pastor, are you going to follow up? Or? Thank you, Nick.
Nick covered it.
Okay.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I wanted to add one more thing as it relates to judgment and everything that was just said. At least for myself, I wanted to make it known that judgment doesn't necessarily attach directly to punishment, as Pastor Richard was talking about someone being on a bench. Judgment is only taking more so of an assessment of awareness, something is being acknowledged and examined, whether it be physical or spiritual, as if, something new or some new information or some new insight is coming out of the whole process that is now being seen or being declared. So within ourselves, as we're moving in to an area of becoming more compassionate and all these other things, it is simply like a reflection of noticing that and then moving in that direction with more intention. That is the judgment in a sense that's taking place. But like I said, not necessarily something that has this negative connotation connected to it.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said that, because I was kind of thinking how to put that. We're at a place that we brought on. We brought this on for because of our search and our desire for truth and understanding and being Elohim and seeing all that. So none of it is negative, and there's nothing that we as been covered in previous lessons. There's nothing that we're losing. Look at the last 6 months, even what we have gained. So the judgment, as Sheldon explained to us, is nothing to fear or to think negative of. It is something to embrace, because it has all been positive. It is all just a growth opportunity that we're having, that we help usher in. So, thank you.
I think that you remember we used to talk about years ago being the tip of the spear. I think that applies when you talk about ushering it in. There had to be a step taken by someone in order for it to be ushered in, and the it of which I speak is the change that we're experiencing. I thought about how easily things can get off track and become confusing, and I believe that exists because of the struggles that we have, and the we of whom I speak, especially the people on Zoom, on this phone, the struggles that we have. The struggles that we have are also reflected in society itself if the order we bring is reflected there. And I see that as what being illustrated by what we see now. There were periods of time when you could look at what was happening in our environment and pretty much determine where we were headed. For example, when Trump was elected, the statement was made that he's the best thing that ever happened because he's going to reveal everything that needs to be revealed, and that he did and is still doing. Right now, we're at a stage where we can't make statements like, at least I can't anyway, because I don't see it as clearly as I've seen things in the past. And I do believe the reason for that is because everything right now is being put in place. If you take the pieces on a chessboard and put them in a box and pull each piece out and put it on the board in its right space, before you get them ordered, there's still confusion. They're still jumbled up in one space. And the process of taking each one of them out and put them in the proper space is how I see what's going on right now. The weather patterns are reflective of the confusion that we are experiencing in the society. And the weather patterns, the earth itself is struggling to come back to a place of balance, a place where it really knows itself and experiences itself. However, I do not believe that could possibly happen until we get to the place where we are comfortable where we are and where we embrace the confusion that we see and not try to explain what we don't understand about it. Just see it for what it is and keep it moving, as opposed to making an effort to make it be something that we would like it to be. All of these years, we made every effort not to shape things, but let them be what they are. But at the same time, keep the eye open so we are able to read the signs of the times. And right now, as far as I am concerned, in reading the signs of the times, I see a puzzle in a box. I don't see order right now, and I don't see what's there to bring the order right now, as I did when I saw Trump and some other things that we've talked about in the past. So as we talk, as we understand, as we see where we are with Scripture, I do believe. Would you mute your phone, please? That as we
Hey,
walk through and see
Mom?
what we.
Mom, I think that's your phone.
As we walk through the Scriptures and see what we see, then I think that we will bring some kind of order to this disorder, this confusion that we see. Because I see this parallel to the period that talks about Jesus and the chaos that existed in the earth when it is said that he walked this earth, the chaos of Rome, Roman culture intersecting with that culture of Palestine, and throwing in the Greek culture in that as well. All of that ball of confusion that Jesus had to work with is what we are working with now. I hope I'm not rambling. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. To me, no matter what the area is, if it's the Aquarian era or the Aquarius era, one of the things that I do buy into is we all placed on this earth or in this arena to create. And a good way to create is being faced with struggle. Struggle will change your mindset real quick. What I got to do, what I got to give up, bada bang, bada boom. The other area in just creating is what we do Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and the other days of the week. Have discussion. And it's always good to have a discussion with people who are comparable to me or greater than me, and they don't see it my way. No one's lesser than me in a discussion, neither am I lesser in a discussion, yet it's a good feeling to create with people who are on my level or greater than me, and they don't see it my way. So this whole aspect of the arena that we're in, of this stage, we're in that arena. Yet before that arena existed, create, have a discussion, embrace this. Right now I'm going through a struggle that I can easily get out of, yet I'm enjoying the process. Because I can't make a phone call and say, hey, you know who I am? You got to treat me different. I'm in an environment now where you got to work with your shirt tucked in your pants. That's a new norm for me. So any struggle that comes your way, you're going to have to create and be grateful for friendship. Whatever experience you're going through, if it's a good experience, if you ain't got no friend to share it with, you can't create. If you get your butt kicked in life, if you don't have a friend to share you getting your butt kicked with, you can't create. So I think we do a very good job of creating, and that's what we placed on the earth to do, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, let me say I agree, and I want to add on to what George said because, as you said, without struggle, there is no process of creation, and relating that to what we're sort of seeing spiritually is the various flavors of struggle that we encounter in the particular age we are in, and whatever tribe of Israel we're dealing with internally influences the nature of what we need to create in order to fulfill the process of recreating the true self, the spiritual being that we are in total, as we move through each stage of this journey. And that applies internally, spiritually, but also even on a more physical level. Challenge is always a catalyst for learning to recreate the self so that in your recreated state, you can address the challenge, whether or not it be physical, spiritual, etc. And that is related to all you need is within you. It is the self that you address and change, and then your environment, be it physical, internal, etc., will change with that. In the context of this process of recreating the spiritual body, recreating the true self. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you addressed the main part that I was thinking, and a lot clearer than I would have said it. But there was another point that George made, is that we don't all think alike, and that is to the strength of being on the phone, that we don't think alike and we don't see things alike, and the part of that is the beauty of it anyway, to me, is that this has very little, if anything, to do with your intellect. How strong is your desire to see truth? Because we are created all in the image and likeness of the Creator. So we all have that ability if you have the desire. So you see what you see, George, and Nick sees what he sees, and I see what I see. And so does everybody on this phone. And when it all comes together, it's the beauty of it is the balance that we all gain from it. So, yeah, I just agree with what you guys said. Thank you. That also brought me up to another thought, something I had mentioned to Pastor earlier. I think sometimes my thinking gets in my way, and I noticed it a lot clearer last few weeks with Nick teaching, and it sounds a little ridiculous till you think about it, I guess. I think we're in a spiritual space now, and I don't need to be as analytical or trying to, I think I try to process every bit and piece of it, and I lose more than I gain. And I don't know how to stop doing that. But I think my thinking, or maybe even the way I think, has become, I won't say a hindrance, but it's not, because I look at my notes sometimes and I have to go back and think, where were we when I wrote that? And I recognize that I lost more than I gained by stopping to write this. So Has anybody else experienced that? And I wonder. I guess I don't trust myself so much yet not to write something down that I'm going to retain it 100%. So,
Ron,
does that even make sense? Go ahead. Yes, sir.
who told you had to retain it 100%?
Well, that's just where my mind is. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't. Yeah, I think that I do. I think I'm supposed to, and maybe I'm not. But and 100% incorrect. I know you're not going to retain it 100%, but a lot of things. Yeah, go ahead. I'm kind of right. Go ahead.
I'm not talking 100% in terms of literally 100%.
Yeah.
First of all, everything that is taught is not necessarily taught for you. Portions of it may be. The other thing is that the reason you feel like you have to write everything down is because that's how your mind functions. It's functioned like that all your life because we have a Western education. What happens to the people who didn't write, who can't even read for that matter? Because keep in mind that everyone could not write. Everyone could not read. But they were in contact with or born with the things around them in terms of the environment. So what makes you think, or think rather, that we are supposed to retain even 80%? Why is it that we can't do as we say, absorb, embrace, hold on to, and trust that when there is a need for it, it will come to our remembrance? Why is it that we feel like we have to be able to regurgitate something? That is because we are being manipulated by intellect, as opposed to allowing our esoteric mind to function as it should. By doing so, by feeling like we have to write something, or that feeling like we have to always remember something in order to be able to regurgitate it, we are putting limitations on ourselves. As long as we allow it to flow, then we are unlimited. It's like a river being dammed. When you stop sometimes to write and you're forcing yourself to do that, that's like damming up the river. However, if you allow yourself to hear with your soul and not just with your ears, then the river continues to flow and you'll flow with it. We have been taught to hear with our ears because the expectation is for us to take a test later on and repeat what we heard. This is not, and I'm not talking to you personally, Ron, I'm talking about all of us. This is not an exercise in academia where there is an expectation to repeat what we hear or to take a test on it. This is an exercise in becoming aware of who we are. And all of us are the same, yet we are different. We have different approaches to learning because we've been taught that way. We have different approaches to hearing because we've been taught that way. We have different approaches to presenting what we hear. So our efforts are I'm sorry, what you explained was, to me anyway, was an attempt to move away from the boundaries of an intellectual mind and expand the mind to the place of an esoteric experience. And this in itself speaks volumes about the intersection between Western and Eastern mindsets. Regardless of how long we have been in the belly of the whale, so to speak, meaning in the midst of this Western education, we still have within us the esoteric mind, and that is the source of our spiritual essence. That is the source that causes us to be more forgiving than anyone on earth. It's that Eastern mindset that we are exercising when we do that. and that Eastern mindset causes us to have a deep sense of compassion, a deep sense of empathy. And what we have a tendency to do is to try to force that to fit into an Eastern mindset when it does not fit there. It just does not. Sometimes I feel like we don't want to admit it because we don't want to hurt feelings. However, I do believe that the reality of it is this: the Western mindset is stoic. The Western mindset is selfish. The Western, and I'm not talking about individual, I'm talking about overall. The Western mindset sees everything as belonging to it, and sees that it must control everything. And there are aspects of that in us. And that's one of the reasons we feel like we have to be in control. However, if we are of an Eastern mindset, then we allow things to flow, and we understand that nothing belongs to individuals, everything belongs to all, and all are to benefit from it. And as such, when we see someone who's not benefiting from it, our empathy moves us to a place where we embrace them so they can benefit from it. So all of this comes into play. But even when we're on this phone and we were deciding whether we're going to quote unquote take notes or whether we're going to teach some notes, I have noticed that most of us who are presenters do our best presenting when we are not speaking from a written notes. And I see that clearly, especially when questions are coming and we don't know what questions are coming. Our responses to them is not based on what we have researched or what's on the pad. It's based on what's in us. And that research, maybe it was 10 years ago, but it's still in us. But you cannot regurgitate it unless a question comes. So I don't see that as a bad thing or a good thing. I simply see it as growth as opposed to something that you should fight against. Okay? If you fight against it, or if you try to move away from it, consciously do that, then you're actually giving life to it. So just allow yourself to flow. Allow your thinking to flow. And how do you do that? If I don't know the steps to that, but steps and how-tos are more Western than Eastern. And I hope I have responded to what you were asking. And I'm sure there are others who would like to add to or expand on or correct some of the things I may have said. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. And I 100% agree. It's like when everybody first starts teaching and facilitating, when you get nervous, you don't know what to say. The nervousness comes from we are afraid we will not be able to regurgitate or in that way recall specifics of information. And eventually what you learn is that the specific information is less important than whether or not you have engaged in an empathetic way with the spirit of what is being asked so that your own spirit can correctly identify how to respond. It is you perceive feeling in the spirit and you respond from feeling and spirit. And the extent to which you have absorbed that information, whatever you need will come. Even if it's not specifics, you can still respond in concepts. And that is more important than the specifics. Now, the specifics can give you an idea whether or not your concepts are accurate if you're worried about that. But the worry is itself something that you learn to let go of, because that's a more intellectual part of yourself. Thank you.
I, for one, think it's incredible that we can talk about, things where we want to improve or that we want to change. I know I had a conversation with James Richard yesterday. I think that was yesterday about I feel like I can't meditate properly, and just struggling with a sense of inadequacy around that. And he's saying that you can't really do it wrong. I don't know. I agree too with what everyone else was saying in terms of just kind of letting things wash over you.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, not to say you can't use specifics for a starting point. But that will be the seed from which the flower of spirit grows, or some metaphor that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, I think we're at a good place to take a pause and resume tomorrow. Are there any objections? Do you guys want to go on? It's been a little over an hour, and about an hour and 15 minutes.
I want to know if there's any questions about anything.
Yeah.
Current events, things you've been thinking about as it relates to esoteric and spiritual things. Okay.
Nick, I just personally, I was telling Pastor earlier this morning, we were talking that I noticed something the other day. I'm at a place many years ago. I guess it was something I noticed and really appreciate. I had a deep appreciation for the fact that I could be at peace at anywhere I was. And I felt that, and how beautiful that felt to experience that and be at one with my surroundings. And when I moved into this apartment, I had not felt that, at least not to that degree and not ongoing. And I noticed yesterday I was at that place again, and at that place where no matter what is going on, I can feel and experience that innerness, tranquility, and I had not felt that in a while, and don't know why, but it just kind of left me. I guess from some of the stuff I went through some years ago, but so that's just something I want to share, because that just kind of, I don't know how and when it came back or what prompted it to, but it did. And it was very noticeable. So just want to share that part.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. That is meditation. It's regardless of environment, regardless of what is going on, is figuring out how to recall the tranquility and peace that exists everywhere at all times, if we can find a path back to it. And there is no, like Pastor Richard said, there's no one way to meditate at all. And if we feel like we need to sit cross-legged with our eyes closed, that is totally fine. But I guarantee you that it's more difficult on a physical level than we might think. Like your body starts to hurt, things start to itch. It's very much a thing that requires discipline, but you don't have to do that if that is uncomfortable. That's something you can eventually do as it becomes comfortable. But it really just kind of depends on your ability to sharpen your focus within a particular experience. And that's actually what yoga is. So yoga is the physical aspect of meditation. It is putting yourself in a bunch of weird positions so that you can overcome the desire to remedy a physical situation, so that you can, in spite of being uncomfortable at first, you can focus. And that is the same pattern. That's the same sort of exercise that meditation is, that can be applied to any and all aspects of life, wherever we find ourselves made to be uncomfortable in a certain way. And that is the catalyst, that uncomfortableness that we've talked about. Everything about this physical experience is uncomfortable on some level, and we just learn to get used to it as we grow up, and we learn how to deal with it, and we learn how to find that peace and balance. So the whole process of coming to terms with this is a meditation. It is a exercise in learning how to recall that tranquility and balance that is present at all times. And when you learn to recall that, and when you can get to that state more quickly, or even if you feel like you can't, it's fine. Like, you are aware that it is there. That is how that is, that spirit or that energy is drawn down into this physical sort of material experience. And that plays out in all aspects or avenues of life that we face. Physically, materially, when we learn how to bring peace and stability to our physical environment, mentally, emotionally, when we learn how to bring peace to sort of the various things that have caused us to experience trauma, etc., and spiritually, which is a further inner extension or inner depth that is reached, that is in some ways the origin of our emotional and mental state, or is the origin of our emotional and mental state. But it's all these different things are not different. They're parts of the same spectrum. And all sort of peace, balance, etc., ultimately comes from the spiritual core, which is Yeshua, which is both male and female, which actually is as I mentioned, a formula of consciousness. It is an equation of consciousness. It does not actually have gender, though that's because of where it sits on the tree of life. It's in the middle. Gender is an actual thing resulting from spiritual principles. But yeah, anyway, thank you.
Oh, no, you don't get to leave that there, Nick. You're talking about Yeshua as a formula for consciousness. I need a little more. And how does that relate to the name of Jesus? Like,
why don't we start that tomorrow?
Oh, okay. I can wait.
I just wanted to add, yeah, I agree, because with yoga is the physical side of, you put yourself in those positions, you kind of struggle with it, but as you learn to practice more, you learn to breathe to get through it. And you learn to control your breath in a way that will help you get through it. So ultimately, it's all about breath and discovering that even any situation in life, if you rely on your breath in terms of your spiritual connection to the Creator, you'll get through it.
Mm-hmm. Great observation. Nick and Janice, you guys gonna remember where we are tomorrow?
I'll try.
Probably.
Before we go, though, I wanted to ask, I was talking with Vermel yesterday, and we were discussing titling videos. And I wanted to see what you guys think about, before we break, just taking a moment to maybe discuss what those key words are. Because I think, Vermel and I have ideas, but everyone's going to have a slightly different takeaway. And at least having that at the end might make it easier to find the video. Like, having that discussion could make it easier to find the video in the future.
Yeah.
So I don't think we have to take long. I think today I'd probably pick out the age of Aquarius and the Zodiac. And I forgot what the last thing was we talked about.
Me too. What did we talk about?
It's harder than it looks, guys.
Maybe you could mention that, the 12 tribes of Israel or something. It's probably impossible to title these videos. You'd have to break it into 10-minute pieces to get a title that accurately reflects what's in that video. But
well, we talked about meditation.
We talked about the age of ages, Aquarius in particular.
Okay, I guess that's enough. We'll put that in.
We talked about
Thank
what's
you.
the definition of an age.
Yeah. Oh my God, there are no keywords, are there?
We talked about the Zodiac and the 12 tribes of Israel. Stages of self from the perspective of the word ages.
What about this, though? Usually when most of us are doing something, if it's more on one topic, can we just call it Q&A? Because Q&A, we're all over the place. But if Nick were teaching, he'd have a subject or at least a place he begins from, and that would be true for all of us, and it would be easier to use those keywords. But Q&A is just all over the place, and that would be a little more difficult, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can include that. We just do the best we can, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll just pull out like the major themes that we hear, and Ramel and I talk about it a little bit, try to cover the bases, and we'll keep it rolling. We'll do the best we can.
Yep.
So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you for doing it.
I don't know if it helps, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it does help.
Tell you what, I love today. Thank you guys for everybody, and look forward to tomorrow. Look forward to this.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, okay. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.